The warm summer breeze swept through London's busy streets as James Morrison stepped off the plane at Heathrow Airport. At just 23 years old, he had already amassed over 2 million followers on social media, mostly through his outrageous pranks and daring stunts. His signature move was approaching strangers and creating awkward situations that made his viewers laugh. But this trip to London was meant to take his content to the next level. James adjusted his designer backpack as he waited for his friends Mike and Tyler, who had traveled with him from California. The trio had been planning this European tour for months, with London being their first stop. While his friends were excited about visiting traditional tourist spots, James had only one goal in mind: creating the most viral video of his career. That evening, in their small but modern Airbnb apartment in central London, James scrolled through his phone, studying videos of Buckingham Palace's royal guards. These soldiers, known for their distinctive red uniforms and tall bearskin hats, had always fascinated social media pranksters. Many had tried to make them laugh or break their famous stance, but James wanted to do something that had never been done before. "Guys, I've got it," James announced to his friends, who were unpacking their bags. "Tomorrow, we're going to make history." He showed them his phone, playing various clips of royal guards maintaining their stillness despite tourists' attempts to distract them. Everyone tries to make them laugh, but nobody has ever dared to slap one. Imagine the views. Mike's face turned serious. "That's assault, James. You could get in serious trouble." Tyler nodded in agreement, adding, "Those guys are real soldiers, not actors in costumes." But James wasn't listening. His mind was already racing with possibilities. He could see the video title, "Slapping a Royal Guard. Asterisk go any wrong asterisk, crazy reacts high and asterisk." He imagined millions of views, trending on multiple platforms, and the flood of new followers that would come with it. That night, James stayed up late, researching the best time to visit Buckingham Palace and planning camera angles. He created a private Instagram story for his close friends, hinting at something big coming soon. "Tomorrow, we make history. Stay tuned for the craziest prank ever," he wrote, adding a British flag emoji. The next morning, James dressed carefully in his signature bright yellow hoodie, wanting to be instantly recognizable to his followers. He packed 3 different cameras and made sure his phone was fully charged. Despite his friends' continued protests and warnings, his mind was made up. During breakfast at a local cafe, James couldn't stop talking about his plan. "Think about it. No one has ever done this before. We'll be the first. The video will go viral worldwide. News channels will probably want to interview me." A British couple sitting nearby overheard their conversation and turned around. "Young man," the elderly gentleman said, "those guards are part of the British Army. They protect the royal family. It's not just some tourist attraction." James smiled politely, but dismissed the warning. In his mind, he was untouchable. His previous pranks had occasionally gotten him in trouble, but he'd always managed to talk his way out of serious consequences. His fans loved him for pushing boundaries, and this would be his masterpiece. As they approached Buckingham Palace, the magnificent building loomed before them. Hundreds of tourists were already gathered, taking photos and admiring the guards in their ceremonial uniforms. James felt his heart racing with excitement rather than fear. Mike made one last attempt to stop him. "James, please think about this. We can do something else for views. This isn't worth it." But James was already checking his camera settings, a determined look in his eyes. "Just make sure you get the perfect angle," he told Tyler, handing him the main camera. "This is going to be epic." What James didn't know was that this decision would change his life forever. As he walked toward the guard post, adjusting his hoodie and practicing his signature mischievous smile, he was completely unaware that in less than an hour, he would be in handcuffs, facing charges that would send him to one of Britain's toughest prisons for 5 long years. The clock struck 11 a.m., and James Morrison took his first step toward the guard post, sealing his fate with each stride forward. His pursuit of viral fame was about to turn into a cautionary tale that would be remembered for years to come. The summer sun beat down on Buckingham Palace as tourists gathered in clusters, their cameras clicking away at the iconic guards. Lance Corporal William Hayes stood perfectly still at his post, his red uniform pristine and his bearskin hat casting a slight shadow over his expressionless face. After 6 years of service, he had mastered the art of maintaining absolute stillness, even as tourists tried their usual tricks to make him smile. James Morrison approached confidently, his yellow hoodie making him stand out in the crowd. Tyler followed behind with the camera, while Mike hung back, wanting no part in what was about to unfold. James had already gone live on his social media, and thousands of viewers were tuning in to watch his biggest prank yet. What's up, guys? It's your boy James here at Buckingham Palace, and today we're going to do something that's never been done before. He spoke loudly into his phone, drawing attention from nearby tourists. Several people recognized him from social media and started recording, expecting one of his famous pranks. A palace security officer noticed the commotion and began walking toward James, but he was too far away to prevent what happened next. James circled the guard once, making funny faces and dancing. Lance Corporal Hayes remained motionless, following protocol as he had been trained to do. "Look at this guy, he's like a statue." James laughed into his phone. "Let's see if we can make him move." The crowd grew larger, some people uncomfortable with James's behavior, others excited to see what would happen next. A mother quickly pulled her children away, sensing trouble. James moved closer, now just a few feet from the guard. The warning signs were clearly visible. "Do not touch the Queen's Guard and guard on duty. Keep your distance." But James ignored them all, caught up in the moment and the growing number of viewers on his live stream. "Okay, guys, watch this," James announced, holding his phone in one hand. "This is going to be epic." Without warning, he stepped forward and delivered a sharp slap to Lance Corporal Hayes' face, the sound echoing across the palace grounds. The crowd gasped in shock. For a split second, everything seemed to freeze. Then chows erupted. Lance Corporal Hayes, trained for such situations, immediately broke his stance and grabbed James's arm with military precision. Simultaneously, two armed response officers who had been watching nearby sprinted toward them. "It's just a prank. It's just a prank," James shouted, trying to pull away, but the guard's grip was like iron. Within seconds, James was face down on the ground, with multiple officers securing him. His phone skidded across the pavement, the live stream still running as thousands of viewers watched in disbelief. The tourists scattered in panic, some still recording, while others hurried to leave the area. Mike and Tyler stood frozen, their camera capturing everything. Palace security quickly established a perimeter, and more police officers arrived within minutes. "You're under arrest for assaulting a member of Her Majesty's Armed Forces," an officer announced, securing handcuffs around James's wrists. The reality of the situation finally began to sink in, and James's cocky smile disappeared. "Come on, man, it was just for YouTube," James pleaded as they led him away. "I didn't mean any harm," but his words fell on deaf ears. Lance Corporal Hayes, now relieved of his post, gave his initial statement to the police, his face showing a red mark where James had struck him. The incident caused a security lockdown of the palace grounds. Tourists were evacuated, and a police cordon was established. News crews began arriving, having heard about the assault through social media. James' livestream had already been clipped and was spreading rapidly across the internet, but not in the way he had hoped. In the back of the police car, James sat in stunned silence. His phone had been confiscated, but he could see people pointing and taking pictures as the vehicle pulled away from Buckingham Palace. Mike and Tyler were being questioned by police, both looking pale and worried. Within hours, the video of the incident had gone viral, but the comments were not the supportive ones James was used to. People were outraged, calling him disrespectful and demanding severe punishment. British news channels picked up the story, showing the footage alongside headlines about the assault on a Queen's Guard. As the police car disappeared around the corner, Lance Corporal Hayes returned to his duties, his face once again impassive. But this incident would be remembered as one of the most serious breaches of protocol in recent years, and James Morrison was about to learn that some pranks come with consequences that no amount of social media fame can fix. The holding cell at Westminster Police Station was nothing like the luxurious London hotel room James Morrison had planned to sleep in that night. The cold concrete walls and single metal bench were a harsh contrast to his usual lifestyle. His yellow hoodie had been replaced with a standard-issue gray jumpsuit, and his expensive sneakers were now sitting in a property bag. Within hours of his arrest, James's face was plastered across every major British news channel. In the interrogation room, Detective Inspector Sarah Thompson laid out the evidence before James. Multiple camera angles of the incident played on a screen, his own live stream, tourist videos, and most damagingly, the palace's high-definition security footage showing clear premeditation as he circled the guard before the assault. "Do you understand the seriousness of what you've done?" Detective Thompson asked, her voice stern but professional. James, now without his usual confident smile, nodded silently. Reality was finally sinking in. This wasn't California, where his previous pranks had earned him nothing worse than a warning. This was Britain, and he had assaulted a member of the military on royal grounds. Meanwhile, at the American Embassy in London, James' parents were desperately trying to get information about their son. They had booked emergency flights from California after seeing the viral video. His father, a respected accountant, looked devastated as he spoke to embassy officials. "He's just a kid who made a stupid mistake," he pleaded, but the officials explained that the situation was beyond their immediate help. Back at Buckingham Palace, Lance Corporal Hayes was giving his official statement. The impact was substantial enough to cause physical discomfort and momentary disorientation, he reported, his military bearing intact even as he described the assault. The medical examination had documented redness and slight swelling on his cheek, adding to the severity of the charges. The palace issued a formal statement. "An assault on a member of the Queen's Guard is an assault on the institution they protect. We are treating this incident with the utmost seriousness." This official response sent shockwaves through diplomatic channels, with the American embassy receiving formal communications about the incident. James's friends, Mike and Tyler, were released after questioning but weren't allowed to leave the country. Their cameras and phones had been confiscated as evidence. Both young men sat in their airbnb, watching in horror as their friends' actions sparked international outrage. Social media platforms were exploding with reactions. #Royal Guard Assault was trending worldwide. Former fans turned critics, sharing old videos of James' previous pranks and pointing out patterns of escalating reckless behavior. Content creators he had collaborated with quickly distanced themselves, removing shared videos and posting statements condemning his actions. In the detention center, James was allowed one phone call to his parents. "Mom," his voice cracked, all traces of his online persona gone, "I really messed up." His mother's tears could be heard through the receiver as she assured him they were on their way. For the first time in years, James wasn't thinking about views or likes. He was thinking about the very real possibility of serving time in a British prison. The police investigation moved quickly. Forensic teams analyzed the digital evidence, including James' private social media messages discussing his plans. His previous posts bragging about the upcoming crazy prank proved particularly damaging, showing clear intent. Legal experts appearing on news programs explained the severity of the situation. "This isn't just assault," one barrister explained on Sky News. "This is an attack on a serving member of the military at a protected royal site. The courts will want to send a clear message." By nightfall, James was transferred to a more secure facility. His initial hearing was scheduled for the following morning. The American consular officer who visited him explained that while they would ensure his rights were protected, they couldn't intervene in the British legal process. In his cell that night, James lay on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. The gravity of his situation was overwhelming. His phone, his followers, his carefully crafted online image. None of it mattered now. Outside his cell, British newspapers were already preparing their morning headlines, and social media continued to buzz with updates about the foolish American prankster who had learned the hard way that some things aren't meant to be joked about. The immediate consequences of his actions were just beginning to unfold, and James Morrison, self-proclaimed king of social media pranks, was about to learn that real life doesn't come with an edit button or a delete option. The Westminster Magistrates' Court buzzed with unusual activity as James Morrison faced his first hearing. Gone was his trademark yellow hoodie, replaced by a conservative gray suit his parents had rushed to buy from Savile Row. His normally perfectly styled hair was flat and unkempt after nights in custody, and dark circles under his eyes revealed his lack of sleep. Crown Prosecutor Victoria Blackwood stood before the court, her red robes a stark reminder that this wasn't one of James's casual U2 appearances. "Your Honor," she began, "the defendant not only assaulted Lance Corporal Hayes, but did so with clear premeditation and for commercial gain." She played a series of James's social media posts leading up to the incident. Each clip showed him bragging about his upcoming historic prank in London, making the defense's job increasingly difficult. James's hastily hired defense attorney, Richard Bennett TUC, sat beside him, looking concerned. The evidence was overwhelming. Not only did they have the viral video of the assault itself, but prosecutors had uncovered private messages to his content manager discussing how to monetize the stunt. "Look at these viewing numbers," James had written just hours before the incident. "We'll make bank when this drops. The Palace Guard video will go crazy viral." These messages now scrolled across screens in the courtroom, causing James to sink lower in his chair. His parents sat in the public gallery, his mother quietly wiping tears while his father stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. They had mortgaged their house to pay for his legal defense, hoping to keep their son out of British prison. The prosecution called their first witness, Lance Corporal Hayes himself. In his full ceremonial uniform, he cut an impressive figure as he took the stand. His testimony was devastating in its military precision and clarity. "The assault was unexpected and significant," Hayes stated firmly. "It compromised my ability to perform my duties protecting the palace, even if only momentarily. Such actions could have created a serious security breach." Security experts testified about the potential risks James's actions had created. "If this behavior goes unpunished," one expert explained, "it could encourage others to attempt similar or worse provocations, putting both the guards and the public at risk." During a break in proceedings, James's social media empire continued to crumble. His sponsorship deals were cancelled one by one. Brands that had once paid thousands for his endorsements now issued statements distancing themselves from him. His subscriber count dropped by the hour. The most damaging testimony came from a social media analyst who presented James's history of escalating pranks. Videos showed him harassing service workers, disrupting public spaces, and repeatedly ignoring warnings about his behavior. "This wasn't an isolated incident," the analyst explained. "It was the culmination of increasingly risky behavior aimed at gaining views and monetary compensation." James's defense team tried to paint him as a naive young man caught up in internet culture. "My client is a product of our times," Bennett argued. "He's a young person who lost sight of reality in pursuit of online fame. He deeply regrets his actions." But the prosecution was relentless. They presented statistics about rising incidents of harassment against royal guards, arguing that a strong message needed to be sent. The court was shown tourist complaints from previous months about social media pranksters disrupting palace security. James was finally allowed to speak. Standing in the dock, his voice trembled as he addressed the court. "I am truly sorry," he began, his usual confident persona completely gone. "I didn't think about the consequences. I didn't think about Lance Corporal Hayes as a real person doing an important job. I just thought about views and likes." The judge, the Honorable Justice Eleanor Winters, listened intently, but her expression remained stern. She took particular interest in financial records showing how much money James had made from similar pranks in the past, suggesting this was more than just youthful mischief. As the day's proceedings ended, James was led back to holding. His bail application had been denied due to flight risk concerns. Through the window of the security van, he caught a glimpse of protesters outside the court holding signs reading, "Respect our guards," and "Justice for the Queen's Guard." The media frenzy showed no signs of slowing down. British tabloids ran headlines like "YouTuber's prank could land him in Crown's prison," while legal experts debated the likely severity of his sentence on evening news shows. The first day of legal proceedings had made one thing clear: the British legal system was not treating this as just another social media prank, and James Morrison's pursuit of viral fame had led him into very real legal peril. The Metropolitan Police's Digital Forensics Unit worked tirelessly in their London headquarters, sifting through James Morrison's extensive digital footprint. Detective Sarah Collins led the investigation, her desk covered with transcripts of James's social media posts, private messages, and deleted content recovered from his devices. What the investigation team discovered painted a troubling picture. In a group chat dated 3 weeks before the incident, James had written, "Guys, I need to do something huge in London. The regular pranks aren't getting the views they used to. We need to go bigger." The messages showed a calculated escalation of his planned actions. "Look at this," Detective Collins pointed out to her colleague. He researched the guard rotation schedules. He even studied the palace's security camera positions. The evidence of premeditation mounted with each recovered file. James had created multiple draft thumbnails for the video, with titles like "I made the Queen's Guard a Tesi and "Royal Guard loses it, go any wrong asterisk." Meanwhile, at the palace, security officials conducted their own internal investigation. They discovered that James had attempted to access the grounds the day before the incident, possibly for a practice run. CCTV footage showed him studying the guards' movements and taking photos of security positions. Lance Corporal Hayes' commanding officer, Major James Richardson, provided investigators with a detailed report about the impact on palace security protocols. This incident exposed vulnerabilities in how we handle social media personalities, the report stated. These individuals often have large followings who might attempt to replicate their actions. The investigation extended to James's entire content creation team. His manager, Sarah Chen, was interviewed via video link from Los Angeles. James was obsessed with creating more shocking content, she revealed. He kept saying that normal pranks weren't enough anymore. He needed something that would break the internet. Financial investigators uncovered the true scale of James's social media empire. His previous pranks had earned him millions, with brands paying premium rates for his viral content. Documents showed he had expected the Palace Guard video to be his most profitable yet, with projected earnings of over $500,000 from views and sponsorships alone. The police also interviewed tourists who had witnessed the incident. A German family provided crucial video evidence showing James practicing the slap motion behind the guard's back before actually doing it. A British retired teacher gave a statement about hearing James boast to his friends. "This will be bigger than any royal news this year." James's friends' phones yielded more damaging evidence. In a voice message to Tyler the night before, James had said, "Even if we get in trouble, think about the publicity. Any press is good press, right? Logan Paul got bigger after his controversy. We just need our moment." The investigation team was particularly interested in a draft video found on James's laptop. Titled "My Apology," it had been prepared before the incident, suggesting he had anticipated backlash but thought it would be manageable. The file's creation date proved he had planned for controversy. Social media experts brought in by the prosecution analyzed James's content strategy. They found a clear pattern of escalating violations of personal space and dignity in his pranks, leading inevitably to the palace incident. His videos had gradually pushed boundaries further, chasing higher engagement rates. Detective Collins compiled surveillance footage from James' week in London. It showed him visiting the palace 3 times before the incident, each time getting closer to the guards and testing their reactions. The final report described his actions as a carefully choreographed publicity stunt with complete disregard for law, dignity, and security. As the investigation concluded, the evidence filled multiple folders. James's digital devices had revealed over 200 messages discussing the prank, 50 draft thumbnails, numerous sponsorship contracts pending the video's release, and a detailed posting schedule for maximizing viral potential. In her final report, Detective Collins wrote, "This was not a spontaneous act of foolishness, but a calculated attempt to capitalize on the disrespect of a British institution for personal gain. The defendant showed awareness of potential consequences, but proceeded due to anticipated financial benefits." The investigation had transformed what might have been seen as a reckless prank into something far more serious, a premeditated assault for commercial gain. This distinction would prove crucial in the sentencing phase, as the Crown prosecution prepared to make an example of the social media star who thought views were worth more than respect for tradition and law. A tense atmosphere filled the Old Bailey as James Morrison stood in the dock for his sentencing hearing. After weeks of trial, witnesses, and evidence, the moment of judgment had arrived. The historic courtroom was packed with journalists, legal observers, and members of the public, all eager to hear the fate of the American social media star. Judge Eleanor Winters adjusted her glasses as she prepared to deliver her verdict. The rustling of paper echoed through the silent courtroom as she arranged her notes. James stood perfectly still. "This court has heard extensive evidence about your actions at Buckingham Palace. We have seen not just the assault itself, but the careful planning that preceded it. This was not, as your defense suggested, a momentary lapse in judgment." She paused, looking directly at James. You came to our country and chose to assault a member of Her Majesty's Armed Forces for entertainment. The judge referenced the investigation's findings, noting how James had researched guard rotations and planned camera angles for maximum viral impact. She mentioned the pre-written apology video found on his laptop, indicating he knew his actions were wrong but proceeded anyway. Your defense has pleaded for leniency, citing your youth and the pressures of social media fame, she continued. However, the prosecution has demonstrated a pattern of increasingly reckless behavior for monetary gain. Your previous content shows a disturbing trend of disregarding others' dignity for views and profits. James's mother stifled a sob as the judge began discussing precedents. Previous cases of assault on royal guards had resulted in varying sentences, but none had involved such clear premeditation and commercial motivation. This court must send a clear message, Judge Winters declared. The Queen's Guards are not props for social media content. They are serving members of our armed forces, performing a vital security role. The tension in the courtroom peaked as she reached her decision. James Morrison, for the assault on Lance Corporal Hayes, breach of royal security protocols, and the commercial exploitation of these actions, I hereby sentence you to 5 years in Her Majesty's prison. Gasps filled the courtroom. James swayed slightly, steadying himself on the dock. His father's face went pale, while his mother began crying openly. The sentence was significantly longer than what legal experts had predicted. Furthermore, the judge continued, you will be required to pay £50,000 in fines and compensation. Upon release, you will be barred from entering any royal or military premises in the United Kingdom for a period of 10 years. As she explained her reasoning, Judge Winters emphasized the need for deterrence. This sentence reflects not only the assault itself, but the calculated nature of your actions. It must serve as a warning to others who might consider similar behavior for social media fame. The prosecution team nodded in satisfaction. They had argued for a strong sentence, presenting evidence of countless social media personalities who had attempted increasingly dangerous stunts at tourist locations worldwide. James's defense team immediately announced their intention to appeal, but legal experts interviewed outside the court suggested the sentence would likely stand. The judge's reasoning was sound, one barrister told waiting reporters. The premeditation and commercial aspect significantly aggravated the offense. As court officers prepared to lead James away, he was allowed a final moment with his parents. Gone was the brash social media star who had arrived in London weeks earlier. In his place stood a frightened young man facing the consequences of his actions. I'm sorry, he whispered to his parents, his voice breaking. I never thought it would end like this. His mother hugged him tightly while his father stood nearby, trying to maintain composure. Outside the Old Bailey, reactions were mixed. Some felt the sentence was too harsh for what they viewed as a foolish prank. Others, particularly veterans and serving military personnel, approved of the strong message being sent. Lance Corporal Hayes, who had attended the sentencing in his ceremonial uniform, offered no comment as he left the court. His commanding officer, however, issued a brief statement. Justice has been served. Let this verdict remind everyone that our guards deserve respect, not ridicule. As James was led away to begin his sentence, his final glimpse of freedom was through the window of a prison van. His social media empire had crumbled, his millions of followers had largely abandoned him, and he faced the sobering reality that viral fame had led him not to greater success, but to a cell in one of Britain's most notorious prisons. The harsh reality of HMP Belmarsh hit James Morrison the moment he stepped through its imposing gates. The prison, known for housing some of Britain's most serious offenders, was a world away from his luxury Los Angeles apartment and the glamorous life he once led as a social media star. His first day began with the humbling process of exchanging his designer clothes for a standard-issue prison uniform. The guards assigned him prisoner number 24,601, and just like that, his identity transformed from famous influencer to just another inmate. His cell, shared with a quiet man serving time for tax fraud, contained only basic amenities: a bunk bed, a small desk, and a metal toilet. British inmates particularly resented his presence. "Look who it is, the YouTube idiot who slapped our guard," they would mutter as he passed in the corridor. Many viewed his crime as an insult to their country, and they made sure he knew it. During his first week, someone dumped a full tray of food on him in the mess hall, causing raucous laughter from other inmates. The prison routine was mind-numbingly different from his previous life. Wake-up call at 6:30 a.m., breakfast at 7 o'clock a.m., work assignment at 8 o'clock a.m. James was assigned to the prison laundry, spending hours folding sheets in prison uniforms. His hands, once manicured for camera close-ups, became rough from industrial detergents and hot water. His cellmate, Robert, eventually became his only friend inside. "You know," Robert told him one evening, "I've seen your old videos. All that effort to get famous, and now you're famous for all the wrong reasons." The words hit hard, especially as James realized his old life was slipping away. Outside, his social media account sat dormant. His management team had abandoned him, his sponsorship deals were cancelled, and his millions of followers had moved on to the next trending creator. The only messages he received were from his parents and a handful of loyal friends. Prison counseling sessions became his lifeline. During one session, the counselor asked him to reflect on his actions. "I was addicted to attention," James admitted. "Every video had to be bigger, more shocking. I couldn't see where it would end." These sessions helped him understand the toxic cycle that had led to his downfall. The lowest point came 3 months into his sentence when a guard showed him a newspaper. A new viral trend had emerged. People were posting videos mocking his situation, recreating his arrest with comedy sketches. His humiliation had become entertainment for others, just as he had once used people for his own entertainment. Yet slowly, something began to change in James. He started reading books from the prison library, particularly those about digital addiction and the psychology of social media. He began writing letters, not tweets or posts, but actual handwritten letters to his parents, expressing genuine remorse and self-reflection. His work in the laundry earned him privileges, including extra phone time. During calls with his mother, he no longer talked about views and likes, but instead discussed his plans for the future. "I want to do something meaningful when I get out," he told her. "Maybe help other kids understand that social media fame isn't worth destroying your life for." Other inmates began to notice the change in him. The cocky social media star was replaced by a more humble, thoughtful person. Even some of his former critics in the prison started to show him basic respect, seeing his genuine efforts to reform. James started participating in the prison's education program, studying psychology and digital media ethics. His experience became a case study in the program's module about social media's impact on behavior. Other inmates were surprised to find him articulate and insightful during class discussions. 1 year into his sentence, he received permission to speak to a group of at-risk youth visiting the prison. Standing before them in his prison uniform, he shared his story. "I thought I was untouchable because I had millions of followers," he told them. "But in here, followers mean nothing. What matters is who you really are." The prison chaplain noticed James frequently sitting alone in the chapel, not for religious reasons, but for quiet reflection. "Prison has a way of stripping away the artificial," the chaplain observed. "Some find their true selves in here." As his second year behind bars began, James received news that his story was being used in schools as a cautionary tale about social media responsibility. While this once would have excited him as another form of fame, he now felt a different emotion, hope that others might learn from his mistakes. In his small cell at night, looking at the single photo of his family he was allowed to keep, James Morrison reflected on how far he had fallen, and paradoxically, how this fall had forced him to finally grow up. 3 years into his 5-year sentence, James Morrison sat in the prison's visitor area, facing an unlikely guest, Lance Corporal William Hayes, the guard he had slapped. The meeting, arranged through the prison's restorative justice program, marked a significant turning point in James's journey. "I want to apologize to you face to face," James said, his voice steady but humble. "Not for views or clicks, but because I understand now what I did wrong." Hayes, no longer in his ceremonial uniform, but dressed in civilian clothes, listened carefully as James explained how prison had changed his perspective. Back in the outside world, the incident had sparked significant changes. Buckingham Palace had implemented stricter security measures against disruptive social media personalities. Tourist guidelines lay. James' old social media accounts, though dormant, had become digital museums of what not to do. Teachers used his videos in lessons about digital citizenship and responsibility. His rise and fall had become a case study in university courses about social media's influence on behavior. Through a prison writing program, James began composing letters to social media influencers, especially younger ones showing signs of escalating their content for views. The likes and views are temporary, he wrote, but the consequences of your actions are permanent. Many of these letters were published in digital media journals, reaching millions without him seeking personal glory. His parents had moved to a smaller house, having spent much of their savings on his legal defense, yet they noticed a positive change in their son during visits. "We're actually having real conversations now," his mother told the documentary crew. Before, he was always performing, always thinking about content. Now he's present, he's listening. The prison administration noted James' positive influence on other inmates, particularly younger ones obsessed with social media fame. He started an informal support group called Beyond the Likes, helping others understand the difference between online validation and real self-worth. As his release date approached, James received numerous offers for exclusive interviews and tell-all book deals. To everyone's surprise, he declined most of them, accepting only those that focused on education and prevention rather than sensationalism. During his final year, James worked with cyber psychology researchers studying the effects of social media fame on behavior. His insights helped develop new guidelines for content creators and platforms dealing with viral challenges and pranks. The guard-slapping incident had unexpected ripple effects across social media platforms. Several major platforms introduced stricter policies about prank content, requiring creators to certify their stunts wouldn't harm or harass others. The term Morrison effect became shorthand for the consequences of taking social media stunts too far. James's former content creator friends had largely moved on, but a few maintained contact, sobered by his experience. Some even changed their content style, focusing on more meaningful topics rather than shocking pranks. James's story scared us straight, one creator admitted in an interview. Near the end of his sentence, James received permission to record a short video message for a social media safety conference. Looking directly into the camera, without any of his old showmanship, he said, "I thought I was building an empire, but I was actually building my own prison long before I got here. Don't let likes and views become more important than your humanity." The week before his release, James met with his probation officer to discuss his future plans. Instead of returning to content creation, he expressed interest in working with youth organizations to prevent social media addiction and reckless behavior. His personal experience had given him unique insights into the dangers of digital fame-seeking. On his last night in prison, James wrote in his journal, "5 years ago, I thought making people laugh at others' expense was success. Now I understand that real impact comes from helping people grow. My millions of followers never made me as fulfilled as helping one person make better choices." As his release date approached, the media again buzzed with interest, but James had no plans for a grand comeback. Instead, he had accepted a modest position with a digital literacy nonprofit, ready to begin his life's second chapter, not as a social media star, but as someone who had learned the hard way that real life happens beyond the screen. The story of James Morrison became more than just a viral moment or a cautionary tale. It became a turning point in how society viewed the intersection of social media fame and real-world consequences. His journey from digital fame to prison, and finally to redemption, would be remembered long after the likes and views had faded away.